Bases dropped on a new round of SDH AM. John here, you there. Thanks for coming by, as you always do. Here's the rundown for the morning. If I've got something in my brain for opening kickoff, we'll do that before KCD joins us. Kacey White's going to drop by about 9:15, and we will go over her match as the Wonder Twins were in Charlotte for a big upset win for CF Montreal. We'll go over that. We've got the NWSL to get into because she had a very, very busy weekend on the international feed with that. And we'll also preview the ACC and find out what's going on in women's soccer and what's going on in the ACC and buzz past the SEC as well. In the in-betweens, it will be starting about 9:45 or so. We'll get into Champions League. We'll get into Atlanta United 2 in depth. We still have no answer on when the match is going to have the 20 minutes of Thunderdome to complete itself in match day 27, which really was match day 25. And when that happens, when we know, we'll let you know. Obviously, if there's a way we can do the game, we'll do the game, and it'll be on the network. That 20 minutes will be on the network somewhere, somehow this week. Chattanooga FC came home yesterday, and so now that sets the clock in motion, trying to figure out the 20 minutes of chaos before decision day on Sunday, which determines everything. And we'll go over the whole MLS NEXT PRO layout, but we'll go through Atlanta United 2 and their big win in Chicago. We've got highlights and get into that. So it's Champions League, it's the twos, it's AM news. We've got news out of Sheffield Wednesday that we have to talk about. We've got quick news out of NYC. Their final match of the 25 season is going to be at Citi Field now on Saturday, October the 18th. Then we've got, let's see, just other news that's out there, all the morning news. We'll get into that. But like I said, after KCD joins us, we'll talk Champions League. We'll talk the twos. We'll get your AM news in there. And then at 10:30, as we always do on Tuesdays, we catch up with our friend Jason Stevens about the economics of soccer, specifically having to do with multi-club ownership. And there is, I don't know if you saw this, there is a new piece of legislation in France that has to do with MCOs. We get into that. We get into ownership when it comes to other sections of Europe as well, American influence, all those kinds of things. And it's another big discussion that we have leading forward into our continued understandings about how things are going in Europe, how they affect things in the U.S., how the folks in the United States affect things going on in Europe, and vice versa. And so our education, our master's class in econ and soccer continues at 10:30 with our friend Jason Stevens. And then we get you ready for the rest of your day lined up here in just a little bit. Yeah, Michael, yes, good morning. Yeah, I broke this out this morning, the old 96 Rock t-shirt. And so I have conversations, full disclosure, and I guess story time with John is opening kickoff, brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. There's your QR code, by the way. For those of you who are hanging out with us, however you are doing so, large device or small, start your day with the QR code and go to Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com and buy out the store, because that's what we want you to do. And then when you buy out the store, use the code SoccerDownHere15 so you get 15% off your whole purchase. So you basically buy out the whole store, but you get 15% off. So you leave the store with 15% more than you thought you had. Then the folks at Kickoff Coffee take 10%, reinvest it in the youth games, youth initiative stuff that they have earmarked as cool. Brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. All right. Involving the t-shirt, there will be conversations. I don't know how many of you listen to the Sam Crenshaw morning show on the weekends on 92.9 The Game and the Odyssey app. Greg Clarkson is his co-host. And Greg and Sam and Greg, they've been doing the show for a long time now, and they have each other's riffs down and all of that stuff. Greg used to work at 96 Rock on both the FM and the AM side. And I say that because, once again, you have this t-shirt, and it was 960 AM, 96.1 FM. And for me, that was my first exposure to Greg all those years ago, was when 96 Rock had both an AM and an FM signal. What they would do is they would simulcast portions of the day, but then they would break out other shows like the midday show, and that would be where I would listen to Greg on the AM side of things, while the FM side would do the morning show, and then it would be like Rude Awakening, Katie Kiley, Willard, and then that would get you into the afternoons and in the evenings at 96 Rock. But that was my first exposure to Greg Clarkson. And so to this day, when I am on with Sam and with Greg, there's always a 96 Rock reference in there somewhere just because of what it means. And the interesting thing is, Greg always reminds us about the license plates, and the license plates still exist here in town. And it is one of those things where you're supposed to hang it upside down, and Greg had the rationale for it, and it was a marketing ploy where you see all these 96 Rock plates and they're hung upside down because apparently the folks in marketing thought that they were turning the world upside down, and that was where you would end up listening to your music would be at 96 Rock because they were turning the world upside down. That's why the license plates are upside down. And to this day, and I know I've got it somewhere, I just don't know exactly where. I have my 96 Rock card. I have my 96 Rock card to this day. And it would be something that it would be, literally, and it's still got a little chip in it and everything from all the times that I tried to use it. But it gets you discounts, get you in the door to things and all that kind of stuff. So I still have my 96 Rock card. I need to find, I got a license plate here in the house somewhere. I got to find it. And obviously, when folks sit there and they were starting to reproduce these T-shirts, I absolutely jumped on it because that was just how I was wired. But yeah, Abby, Katie was on 96. She did the afternoon drive on 96 Rock before she was at before she did stuff at Z and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was like Rude Awakening. Then it was like Mark McCain and like all these kinds of, am I thinking 94Q? I'm blending 94Q. So it was like Rude Awakening and Katie and Willard and all that, and the midday and all that. And so that would be your midday to get you into Willard and the night side and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I was a 96 Rock kid growing up. And so whenever I can share stories with Greg and find out about the AM side of things, literally, I would change over in the morning show. I would change from 96 Rock to 960 AM. And that was where I would listen to Greg. So when you listen to 92.9 The Game in the Odyssey app and you have Greg and Sam, now you know a little bit about the history involving Greg and this market and how long he has been here. And it's been fun for me because of growing up listening to 96 Rock in my formative years. You see how I turned out. Listening to them here has been an opportunity to once again circle back and interact with all of them. So it's been fun to be able to do those kinds of things and get those kinds of stories that are going on there. So let's see. So and we do have to talk about the U20s too, Abby. Yeah, we do have to get into the U20s. We'll get into that as well after we catch up with KCD, who's here coming up in a second. Let's see. So I don't listen to I really don't listen to FM radio all that much anymore. If I do, I'm listening to Sirius. That's what I do. Is I go from 25 to 33. I'm listening to those channels, or I'm listening to sports, or I'm watching sports. So that was kind of where. Yeah. Oh, Catalucci, good to see you last night, by the way, at the Brew House. That was nice to catch up with you last night as well for soccer over there, which is going to be there for a while until further notice. That's opening kickoff, brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. Once again, there's your QR code for those of you hanging out with us this morning, and you get to do things on the video side of things. You hit that QR code, start your day with Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. We want you to buy out the entire store. And then when you buy out the entire store, what you do then is use the code SoccerDownHere15. You get 15% off your purchase, and they take 10% reinvested into youth games. Youth initiative stuff that they have earmarked as cool, brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee and kickoffcoffeeco.com. It is Tuesday. It's time to bat leadoff. We know what that means. It's time for KCD to find out what's going on in her part of the world. And we will find out. And this is what we have planned for KCD this morning. And with KCD, it is an opportunity to check on what is up with the NWSL. She had a very busy time there. She had a busy time involving Charlotte and Montreal. So we'll talk to her about Charlotte and what she thought there, because in that lead-in that we had last week with her, it was one of those conversations where she was intrigued with Dean Smith and trying to figure out what Dean was going to do on this long run of form that they've had, where they didn't lose. And so it was a big unbeaten run for Charlotte. And as it turns out, it was the end of an unbeaten run for Charlotte as they were catching up with one another. And so that's the fun part of all of this. Okay. Okay. So I was wondering, I was looking in the green room, full disclosure. And once again, this is the beauty of live television and everything. So here's the deal. So Kacey and I have a vision. I have a look into the green room, and so I can see what's going on. And I saw Kacey; she was ready to go. She had the spotlight and everything, and she was gassed up. All of a sudden, it dumped. Her signal dumped, and then all of a sudden, I see her studio space and her easy chair, and I'm like, "That's interesting." I didn't know if someone who is massively important needed to, go out on an errand really quickly. So literally, it was like, okay, dark spotlight, everything's there. She's gassed up. She's got the studio lighting and everything going, and all of a sudden, it dumped. And then she comes back, and all I see is the massive Strata-Lounger easy chair that she has in her studio setting, and all the lights are off and everything. And so she is going to try and find an alternate way to dial in this morning. And so we will discuss computers and lighting and everything down here when Kacey White joins us. That was, let's just say, that was one of the more unique things ever, because literally Kacey was ready to go, and all of a sudden it dumped. And then you sit there and you look, and it's like it's an easy chair, and I'm guessing that literally she was on a sprint in her casa trying to figure out what in the heck was going on. Okay, now this is the picture that I had when we started this. This vision of KCD was what we had starting this up. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed, and we're going to see what's going on. KCD, where are you?
I'm back.
Yes, you are.
Sorry about that.
It's almost, no, that was unique. I was like, you saw, you were there, and then all of a sudden it went dark, and then you pop back up, and I see the easy chair, and I don't see you, and it looked like you had sprinted off to the side trying to figure out what was going on.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's exactly what happened. I was here, I had 60% battery, and my computer just shut down. So I have no idea. So I ran to get my battery. I restarted my computer. All good. We're only 2 minutes late. So sorry about that.
Oh, whatever. Stop. No, it's all, I'm more concerned just to make sure that everything is there in one piece and that everything hasn't broken. Like I didn't break anything this morning or something like that.
I don't think so. We'll just blame technology. I think that's the way to go.
Yes. So we'll blame technology and we get you ready for everything. First and foremost, I want to talk about the match that the Wonder Twins had this past weekend. And going into the conversation about Charlotte and their big win streak and their rocketing up the table, I know that you were intrigued to catch up with Dean Smith and find out what the approach was going to be against CF Montreal, a match where they were a decided favorite. But we always say but. That is why they play the games. They don't do them on paper. And you have moments like this, courtesy of our friends at Apple TV and Major League Soccer.
Petrasso, low, diving header, unstoppable. Fabian Herbers with an unsavable header. CF Montreal take the lead.
Vargas steps. When Jalen Neal takes this extra little touch, that's when he realizes that body position changes and he can spray it out to Petrasso, who finds Herbers. That's the perfect ball. He misses out the first defender, but he picks out Herbers. A wonderful header for the finish.
CF Montreal have been crossing balls into the box all evening long. That was a pinpoint cross and an even better finish by Herbers.
And there you go, courtesy of our friends at Apple TV and Major League Soccer. That was, and the one I debated the highlight to use. I wondered if I should do the Melanda red card dog show element or that particular goal. I went with the goal just as a highlight so we could go back and talk about the Melanda red card and the process there that I think flipped the game. Is that a fair assessment to say that when Charlotte went down to 10, they kind of had to defend a little bit and it was all hands on deck at that point?
It was definitely the changing factor of the entire game. Charlotte always had a game plan of being comfortable out of possession and defending. but being down a man 70 minutes, it just was too much for them to handle from a fatigue perspective. And when Montreal got the tying goal by Dante Seeley, they had increased belief. And then they started to move the ball quicker after halftime. They brought in a couple subs. Petrasso was a big part of that. And just eventually, like we see happen often, you break down a back line and a midfield defensive unit. And so the red card was definitely the game-changing point. But we've seen so many times that teams that are down to 10 men sometimes get better. Charlotte just didn't in this moment, or Montreal got that much better and found the finishing efficiency that they have not seen all year.
And you mentioned the idea of going down to 10. I think a lot of folks, they present it as you're down to 10 men, you're freer, I guess, offensively.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that translates when it comes to actual what you're watching, but what is it about going down to 10? Is it basically just, it's like, all right, we're down to 10, blanket, we'll figure out what's going on. What is it about playing freer when you're down to 10 that makes teams worry when they're a man up?
What's interesting about it is I think everyone's responsibility or feeling of responsibility increases by a little percentage because they know they're up against it. And so we know how strong the brain is and how much impact the brain can have. And I think there's just something found in every player when that happens. But at the same time, from a simultaneous perspective, the attacking team sort of can get the feeling that it's just going to happen. Oh, we have the majority of the ball. We should win, all those things. So the mind games are really interesting. Montreal didn't allow that to happen, though. I think this was probably the worst team to allow that advantage to because they already do dominate a lot of games in possession. They just get way too expansive and they give up goals in their attacking transition of their opposition. But Montreal is also in last place, and they're just grasping at anything to get a result. So it was really difficult for Charlotte when this happened.
And because of that, Charlotte, yes, they're in the playoffs. We know they're in. We just don't know the where. The way things lay out right now after the win streak was snapped, Philadelphia's at 63, Cincinnati's at 59, and these are all 32 matches played. NYC is at 32 matches, 56 points. Messi and friends still have 2 matches in hand, and they're at 56. If they max out, they would max out at 62. They'd be the 2 seed. Charlotte's at 53. They played 32 matches. Nashville is at 53. They played 32. They have 1 less win than Charlotte, and they have a massive goal difference advantage at plus 10. Orlando's at 52 and 31 matches played. Columbus is at 50 and 32 matches played. Chicago's at 48 points, 31 matches played. So there's nothing like chaos from basically, 5 to 9 right now, separated by 5 points.
It's a lot of fun for all of us, right?
Oh, yeah. There's something to talk about every week, no doubt.
I know. It's pretty amazing to see that happen. And you mentioned Columbus. They kind of crawled into the playoffs. Luckily for them, they had such an advantage where they were higher up in the standings, but they've had a really rough couple weeks, and that's not the form you want going in. I love Wilfred Nancy. I think he'll figure some things out, but I've said that for a couple weeks now, and it's still not happening. But this was a missed opportunity this past week for Charlotte with trying to finish in the top 4. Not saying they can't do it, but you have a Montreal team coming in. I was worried it was a trap game. It was helped by the red card. Don't get me wrong, but that was a red card. It was clear, in my opinion. So I don't feel like they were hard done by. It just was one of those nights that they just really couldn't recover from it after that.
Okay, walk us through the Melanda moment and why you thought it was a slam dunk call.
And I'll be clear. I needed to look at it a couple times. I don't think it's clear right in the run of play, the speed of play, but that is why we have video assistant review. Mm-hmm. What had happened was that Owusu had stepped towards the ball like he was going to come into the half space to receive. When he timed his run to go in behind, Tim Ream, who was the left center back, had stepped kind of into the channel, and his body positioning was facing the player that was playing the ball in. The right back was further away and up on an angle. So when Owusu made his run to go in behind, it was a 1v1 isolation with Melanda, and he had a half-yard advantage based on timing, but not offside. When you're a coach or a player or refs and you're looking at, could there be anybody else that would have gotten into a position to affect this play had Melanda not made the foul? And they looked at this. When you look at Tim Ream and him standing facing the player that's distributing, he can't turn, take off, sprint in the amount of time that would have been needed to be able to affect Owusu. And so that's really what you're looking at. If Tim Ream had already gotten into a side-on position and was sprinting and reading that play, it's a little bit different, a little bit like, do I call this? But once I saw his body position, that's when I realized it wasn't so much the distance, it was he able to be in a body position to get there.
Casey D hanging out with us with her faulty electronics, and she has persevered. She's hanging out with us here.
We're going.
Persevered on a Tuesday. She bats leadoff with us here. We've run through her matchup with Jess. There weren't any more Harry Potter references, were there?
Not that night. No, there were none. We'll get some. We'll get some out of her.
Well, but that's the thing. I wouldn't know them. That's why, because you and I are kind of like in the same cloth. It's like I know like the basics, and that's
right.
about it. So I'm with you. It's like, all right, give me a Quidditch reference, and I'm out the door. I'm good. I didn't know if anything had carried over to the bank with the.
Someone understands me. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, shoot. I'm right there with you. Let's transfer over to the NWSL, and we now have 2 teams that are in the postseason. We know this after 22 matches. Kansas City and Washington are in. And then after that, we mentioned chaos in the Eastern Conference in Major League Soccer. After the weekend, we'll go back to your 2 matches and find out what you know from the weekend. Here's the rundown, by the way. After 22 matches, we know Kansas City's in at 56 points. They've already clinched the top seed. They're in, and they're just kind of kicking back, waiting for everybody else. Washington is now in at 40. Then 22 matches played. Gotham's at 34. Seattle Reigns at 33. Orlando Pride's at 32. Portland is at 31, and we're at the 19th tiebreaker, I think, when it comes to figuring out that Portland is your 6 and San Diego is your 7 because they've scored the same number of goals. They have the same goal difference. It's chaos figuring that one out, and if you've got the tiebreaker, you're a better person than I. Racing Louisville is 8th at 29. Courage are at 28. They're just out. Dasher at 26 and 10th. Angel City's at 24 and 11th. And you've got 4 matches to go. So let's see, 24 points gives you 11th. 34 points gives you 3rd. So what, 9 teams, 10 points? What the heck is going on here?
This is the NWSL. This is what happens. Usually, though, number 1 and number 2 are involved in it. They're not clinching as early. That's the big difference this year. But even Utah is trying to make a late run. I mean, they put themselves in such a hole that it's almost impossible for them to do it, but you never know. They've been playing unbelievable. So much going on in the NWSL. Washington Spirit clinches with their win over the Houston Dash. I don't believe anyone really expected that type of separation, not because the Washington Spirit are incredibly dangerous, but because Houston usually doesn't give up a lot of goals. They're usually getting shutouts or they're losing by 1 goal, whatever it may be, but they just exploded and they looked on fire in that game. So well-deserved. I think they're the team, and this is something we can talk about later, though. I think they're the team that can give Kansas City a run for their money if they're in that type of form going in. Now, facing the Kansas City Current is a different kind of animal, but if someone can, I do think the Washington Spirit are a well-deserved second-place team.
All right.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so you got Washington. We'll talk Washington and KC in a second. So what was the other matchup you had?
Seattle versus the North Carolina Courage. So this was one hovering around the playoff line. For the Courage, a really big missed opportunity. They needed separation from the Houston Dash to make their lives a little bit easier with only 2 points separating them right around the playoff line. And with Houston losing earlier in the day, it's that extra motivation of we can put ourselves out of that conversation and then worry about the teams next to us or above us. They didn't do that on the road. They had the lead in the second half, and Seattle just completely changed things at halftime. I thought it was a masterclass by Laura Harvey in tactics, what she did at halftime to affect the game, and then the players delivered.
So what did Laura do at the break that flipped things for them?
So 2 main things that I noticed. One, she changed their defending shape to a 4-2-4. They were defending out of more of a 4-2-3-1. It wasn't quite that, but they had a singular 9 pressing against the North Carolina Courage and Jordan Heidema. And she was doing everything she could, but the North Carolina Courage are known for their efficiency on the ball and their technique and their possession. When she changed to a 4-2-4 block, they could not figure out how to penetrate in those passing lanes. And so Seattle was able to pick off balls a lot easier. And when they did, Maddie Darlene off the left side was a lot higher. and she is an attacking-minded 1v1 player. And Madison Curry started playing a little bit higher. So they just had numbers higher up the field in their attacking transition moments, and it made North Carolina uncomfortable.
Okay, let's get into tactics here a little bit. You said formationally you start out with a 4-2-3-1. Atlanta United fans are used to seeing that this season with Ronnie Dyla, where you've got the 4 at the back, then you have the 2 supporting defensive-ish midfielders, or one stays back and turns into an extra center back. The other can jump forward into the offensive play. You have your 3 attacking, playmaking midfielders, and then you have your striker up top. When you go from that 4-2-3-1 to a 4-2-4, how does it not present itself as just being Leroy Jenkins and YOLO and just throwing 4 into the attack or 6 into the attack? You're attacking with 6, defending with 6. What are the differences there when you just have that 4 block up top and they're pushing into play versus the 4-2-3-1? How does that stylistically work out?
So what they did is the first element is setting your line of confrontation where you want it to be. So where are we going to initiate pressure on the center backs when they get the ball? So what Seattle did, they still stayed in a really conservative mid block where they started their pressure just a little bit above the center circle in the opposition half. And when you go into a 4-2-4, you're basically saying, go ahead, center backs, be the best players on the field. You can have the ball. We don't care, because eventually they're going to get a little bit impatient and try to force balls into channels. And so it just makes it where you don't step out as a 1 forward where a center back knows it's obvious to go. And then the next midfielder steps out and now you're finding the best midfielders in possession. It makes, Kaylee Kurtz in the back, Macy Bell, who are wonderful players, but they're not attacking center midfielder type creative personalities. So it made them be on the ball more, which was a huge element.
All right, so I'll bite. You think Washington can be trouble for Kansas City? Please expound on this theory of yours, where Kansas City, they're off on their own. They're just kind of hanging out, and they're kicked back. I don't know if they're kicked back in easy chairs, drinking fruity drinks or whatever, wearing sunglasses, but they're like out here. Everybody else is fighting, and you think that Washington has a shot? How do they pull this off?
To be clear, if anyone has a shot, Washington has a shot. So I will say that on the record.
Right.
There's something here that I think is really interesting, is that the Kansas City Current have only given up, I believe it's 11 goals. Maybe it's 12 now. It's 11 goals on the year. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what that says is that they are comfortable sitting in their defensive unit. And when I say that, I don't mean in a low block right in front of their goal. It's a strategic, we are okay without the ball, but when we get it, we're going to attack. What that does is it creates space high up the field that they can get into. Washington Spirit have shown over the last few weeks that they are more comfortable than they've ever been in the past few years of being in charge of the ball, being in possession, being organized in case they lose it, and having numbers around the ball all the time. So because they're more comfortable in possession, they have more flexibility in their attack. Their movements are very interchangeable. I think if anyone has the ability to break them down, the Kansas City Current, in that lower block, it's the Spirit, because of all the attacking personalities they have. And I'll add one more element. They lost, the Spirit lost last year in the championship. So if they get to the championship, it wasn't against the Current, it was against the Pride, which we know. But if they get to the championship, I just think there's that edge of, we've been here this last year and you kind of still hurt. And so I think there's an emotional edge that if they can make it that far and we see that matchup, it could go towards them.
Gift Monday gets a hat trick on Sunday, and I don't know if she knows Solomon Grundy or not, but it's a hat trick in 18 minutes.
I believe that's what it was. Yeah, 18 through I think you're right.
That's insane. How did that happen?
A wonderful distribution to set her up, first of all. And then her finishing touches, her timing of her run, her first goal was delicate touches to get around the goalkeeper with great buildup. Her second goal was a rebound off her own header at the back post. So think about that. You have like 2-3 defenders around you, plus she had her own teammate, Rose Kawasi, plus a goalkeeper. She goes up to head it, and she's quick enough to find her own rebound with 4 or 5 other players around her. So you have that athleticism piece and reactionary piece. And then her third goal was one that she was just a wonderful finish, timed run. She was able to open up on a run inside the box finish with her left foot. So she finished right foot, left foot, I want to say header. It wasn't. It was a rebound off her header, but close enough. She has a lot of variety in her attack.
She almost had the hat trick
Yes.
in pulling that off. You know, when it comes to the schedule this upcoming week in the NWSL, you've got Houston at Hell in a Shell hosting Orlando. That's Friday Night Football. Then on Saturday, it's Courage with another opportunity. They're a part of the Ion doubleheader. North Carolina Courage hosting Racing Louisville. Then the nightcap in the doubleheader is Portland hosting Bay. Busy Sunday. Spirit hosting the Wave. The Wave need to make, pardon the pun, some waves if they're going to make the clearance from 7th on up. Gotham and Seattle, that one is on Paramount Plus at 4. And you have, so I was about to say red. It's just the Chicago Stars, and Utah's making the charge. Monday night, it's Angel City in Kansas City. When you just look at these matchups from the 30,000 feet looking in, I'm staring at the North Carolina Racing match that could be trouble, and then Washington and San Diego and Gotham and Seattle. Those would be the ones that I would be staring at if I'm looking at things to put on my DVR.
I would agree. Gotham, Seattle, they're probably feeling a little bit more comfortable, but it's impossible to feel comfortable. So they're going to want more separation. The Louisville, North Carolina match, definitely one. North Carolina and Louisville both are going to be thinking we have to win this game. So an emotional management piece. But I'm a little concerned for San Diego. I am on the San Diego train. Like, I love San Diego. I love watching them play, but they've gone through a drought of goal scoring, a drought of points. They're giving up goals. The difference with, like, they're playing the Washington Spirit now, and they're similar teams in some ways. San Diego plays even more possession football, but they have not figured out how to have the finishing touch. They've become a little bit predictable. And so teams are adapting to them, and that's making it really hard. So it's kind of like we were saying with Columbus, like a run of form problem. It feels that way with San Diego. They have all these riches in players, but it's just not clicking at the right time to be able to get results.
Now in the ACC, you're kind of busy. You got a couple of matches. NC State and Wake on Thursday, North Carolina and Pitt on Sunday. I guess my first question is, where's your North Carolina mug?
You did it to me. I planned. I brought out Ramesses today.
See,
early in the week, because it has to go away later in the week because it's not a North Carolina broadcast. It's an ESPN ACC network broadcast. So then I can't bring out my North Carolina gear. But today,
but I mean, it can be off camera and have your hot beverage and your tea, can't it?
That's true. That's true.
I mean, you can't sit there. Oh, who's calling the North Carolina game with you, by the way?
It's Glenn Davis.
Oh, our friend Glenn Davis. Excellent. So, I mean, if you just happen to have your mug and, it's like, on camera for a second, I feel a little parched, sit there and you bring out Ramsey's.
That would be funny.
See, I mean, but no, Glenn is one of our OGs here. And so he's
great
to catch up with him. When you look at the early go rounds in the ACC, and you have these matchups coming up, what is stuck in your mind when it comes to getting ready for these two?
Well, we've had a theme of it all day, a condensed standings. ACC is no different. So you've got the MLS being tight in the Eastern Conference. You've got the NWSL. Because we're still pretty early on in the ACC, it's very tight in the middle. So for three of the four teams, Wake is up there at the top, and I'm sure they want to keep going. But for the other three teams, they really need results. North Carolina State has had a really good ACC slate based on the non-conference. And it's first year under Gary Higgins, who came over from East Carolina. They tied Florida State. They tied Virginia Tech. They narrowly lost to Notre Dame. And they have an ACC win. So they're trying to play that role of, you don't expect anything out of us, but we're going to be spoiler. And they're at home. Wake is in great form, but can they keep it going in the ACC the whole way? We'll see, but Tony DeLuce has a very young team clicking very well.
Yeah, and that's the one to kind of keep an eye on. Once again, Pitt, North Carolina is at 4:00 in Chapel Hill, and you look at the standings on the women's side right now. Early on in the season, like I said, and we know that it's only a handful of matches in conference play, but we always look at it. I always look at it as three separate seasons. It is season one, your non-conference, which gets you ready in theory for season two, your conference, which in theory gets you ready for season three, which is the postseason. So Notre Dame, by the way, they've scored 36 goals in 10 matches, so that's an average of 3.6. Hey, I did math. It's you're only giving up a goal a game so far. Florida State 7-0-2, 3-0-1. Same record for Stanford and Wake out of the blocks. Each one of those with 10 points. Stanford and Wake with 9 wins in the overall. Florida State at 7-0-2. Virginia and Louisville are at 9 points. Louisville, once again, is in double-digit wins. Virginia's right there at the edge of it. Cal at 8 points, 6-1-6. I mean, they wanted to kind of challenge themselves out of the blocks, and they're 2-0-2. Then you've got SMU and NC State. NC State kind of stumbling out of the blocks at 2-6-4. North Carolina, I don't know if you've heard of them. They're at 3 points. They're at 1-2. Duke's at 1-3. Pitt's at 1-3. Early returns on all of these folks. Has there been any outright surprises, or is this kind of chalk for you in the ACC so far on the women's side?
I don't know if there's outright surprises yet. I think the next 10 days, there's going to be some separation, and we're going to start to see where that happens. It could be the top 8 are still really close, but it starts to separate more middle to the bottom. I think we're going to know more, not this coming weekend, but the following. NC State's a surprise. We know that just based on the fact that they didn't get one of those 1 or 2 wins in the non-conference where you thought this could be coming. And look, they're not 3-0, 4-0, but the teams that they're playing and getting results is really good for them. I'm always surprised. I'm very surprised to see Duke lower than where they're at right now, because they started the year so well. And so I had very high expectations, and Wake has overachieved. And I think Tony DeLuce would be the first to say that. Yes, they were in the championship last year, but there were 2 returning players from that starting unit. And so they revamped. They had really good freshmen coming in, but you try not to depend on freshmen too often to lead teams. And right now, their top 4 of their 5 contributors are 2 freshmen and 2 outside backs, which is just a little bit rare. And they're figuring out ways to win. So I'm a little surprised they're as high as they are, but when you know Tony DeLuce, you know he's going to figure something out.
Duke has only won once in their last 5. They were out of the blocks at 5-0. Beat Penn State at home, beat Northwestern at home, went to Arkansas, shut them out, then shut out Creighton, and then shut out VMI. So literally after their first win over Penn State, they had 4 shutouts in a row. They're out of the blocks at 5-0. Now it is drawing Alabama in Durham. Then you're in conference. You lose in Charlottesville 3-1. Mercifully, they beat those low-down dirty cheaters at the University of Coral Gables 1-0. Then they go to South Bend, lose 3-2. Then they go up against Wake and lose 3-2. When you're in a run of form like this, in the times that I don't wish this on anybody, but when you have been in your coaching shoes and you're in a run of form where you start out hot and then you're kind of hitting that stumbling block. It's like you didn't see the speed bump when you're driving down the road. You hit the speed bump and you're going over it too fast and the car bottoms out and you're sitting there and you kind of cringe when you hit the ground. How do you stop a run like that? Or what are the conversations with players to reorient them back to how things were from the beginning and not have them focus on this run of form where they're kind of clunky and you're sitting there going, man, did I put the wrong kind of gas in the car?
There's a difference of what you do behind the scenes with your staff and what you communicate to players. More often than not, the top coaches that I've been around during these runs of form try to simplify things for players. So what do they believe is part of their identity that worked well when they were in their best run of form? So if it was something defensively, go back to that. Look at some video of positives of how they defended early on in the season. And this is a tweak here and there, or different things that they were doing to get into the final third. Or it might be a culture piece. We have to get back to X, Y, or Z. Usually you simplify 2 to 3 things and really hone in the focus on that. The coaches that go and try to fix everything, it's overwhelming for players. And so you don't see that a lot in the best coaches when they're trying to right the ship.
And when you try to fix everything all at once, sometimes you fix nothing and make it worse, right?
Exactly. And that's what is interesting, because we're not behind the scenes. We don't know how these coaches are dealing with it, but it's definitely a matter of focus. And I think Kieran is going to figure that out with Duke. They have a lot of really good players, but ultimately too, there's player responsibility in it as well. I think that communication is different. A leader sometimes has to step up and say, here's what needs to be better, and we're just going to make it happen. And it's always not that simple, but in the collegiate game, there are some times where a player can just take a game over. We saw it with Notre Dame versus North Carolina. Izzy Engel, she's phenomenal, by the way. she just took that game over versus North Carolina. And we saw North Carolina mount a comeback, not because they necessarily played better, because Lauren Malsom said, I'm going to put this on my shoulders and I'm going to score 2 goals. So I think players have to step up too for Duke and really take it on their shoulders to have a result.
All right, we'll keep an eye on things. So it's a busy week for you in the ACC, and I imagine you have to take somebody out for a walk, yes?
I do. He's being so patient right now, though, so he'll survive.
Yeah, so as always, my friend, it's great to see you. Thanks for taking the tour and busting out everything in the ACC, the NWSL, and Major League Soccer, where the Wonder Twins had it at the bank. We're a big win for Montreal going over Charlotte. Be safe, be well. You know you can crash at any time. We'll keep an eye on you. We'll catch up the same time next week.
All right, sounds good. Have a good one.
There goes Kacey D. We know where she be. She is in a place where her computer decides to just crap out. Literally, it's just like 60% energy, and then, and that was how Kacey White just had to manufacture a studio setting this morning. But no, it's great to catch up with Kacey D and find out what's going on her side of the world and tour everything, because literally in a week she could be doing 3 different things, like she has done in past weeks. She could be doing college, she could be doing NWSL, and she could be doing Major League Soccer. And so to have that kind of a voice and to be able to kind of play things off of her, where we can ask the coach what's going on, we can ask what she thought about the activity going on in front of her at a match, and then have her put her coach's cap on, find out the differences, in the nuances when it comes to formations. That was why when she said that there was a formation change that was key, I wanted to find out what the nuances are in a formation that we're familiar with in discussing Atlanta United. Then you go to a 4-2-4, what the differences are and what you're looking at and those kinds of things, so we can know what to look for in these kinds of situations going forward. And then she's got the ACC this week. She's done the SEC before. And so we've got SEC and ACC, all the things going on, and it's great to catch up with KCD and find out what's going on with her and her universe. All right, thanks for dropping by and hanging out with us here on Tuesday Thoughts. Once again, your Tuesday Thoughts can hang out in the Twitch pitch, and we can have conversations and talk about things. Remember, it's always pretty much whatever you want to talk about. And I mean, it's no different than, like, say, a Wall Pass Wednesday, but Wall Pass Wednesday, we kind of go into a bunch of different topics all over the place. So coming up between now and 10:30, we'll go over Champions League. We'll go over the news of the day. We'll go over Sheffield Wednesday, and that kind of plays into one of the topics that we have with Jason Stevens coming up at 10:30 when we talk about the economics of sport, and then all the other news that's going on and anything else that comes across our collective bow. And we are going to talk about Atlanta United too, and find out what's going on with them. And we still, like I said, we are still waiting. We are still waiting. Still waiting. And that is they're still waiting to figure out the when, as to when that 20 minutes of chaos is going to be figured out, to where we all know what is going on. With the 20 minutes that's left in the season from match day 25, and we can get moving toward, or just match day 20, 25, 26. So if 27 was this past week, 28 is tomorrow, so 26, sorry. So the completion of match day 26. 20 minutes there, then match day 28, and it's all got to happen between this very second and basically Sunday at 1 o'clock. So we don't know yet. No, we don't know yet. Don't know yet. And like I said, part of it has to do with Chattanooga flying home yesterday. Because they had a night game in New York, they couldn't get out of New York late night Sunday. So they had to get out of town on Monday and come into town on Monday. So they could not have done anything quickly. They couldn't do anything today, I would imagine, just because of rest, recovery, etc. So you're flying in on Monday. You want rest and recovery at the very least Tuesday, and then you try to reorient your week and push it forward. But we don't know anything yet. We do not. Zero bupkis nada. But when we do, then we'll have a better idea as to what it looks like, where it's going to be. Because I would imagine that Chattanooga FC has to hop on a bus, and they've got to come back this way. They've got to come southeast and play in a location that we got to find out on a day that we've got to find out and lay it all out there and figure out, okay, 20 minutes, you're basically driving an hour to warm up, play 20 minutes, and turn around and go back. And legitimately, it might just be vans. Because, once again, we'll recap the situation here. The game was suspended at 69:30. You have to go to 75 minutes for it to be official. Regardless, they hadn't gotten anywhere close to 75. The clock had gotten into the 70s, like 70-15, 70-30, whatever. They backed it up to 69:30, suspended the clock there. Chattanooga is out of subs. They have no sub windows. They have nothing. They have no one available to them on the bench, even if folks were available on the bench. They've used all their sub windows, and they have no subs available to them. So the 11 that are on the field right now will be the 11 that will finish the match. So literally, I could envision a van or two, not even a bus, but two vans that you pick up from the airport. Maybe you go to Busmax or something. You get those two vans, you fill them with equipment, and 11 people plus a coaching staff. So you're probably talking 14, 15 folks. You bring them southeast about an hour. You play the 20 minutes. Whatever that 20 minutes is, the 11 that are on the field are the 11 that you got. Chris Nugent's out of windows. He's out of subs. And 3 of the players, I believe it's 3, are on yellow cards. I think Jose Silva has 1 more window left, so he can sub out if he needs to. But as the game was suspended, that's where we are. Once again, no subs available for Chattanooga. They're locked in. Match delayed, literally. That's what it looks like. That is where you are. Yellow cards, and the final 2 subs were made just before, for Chris Nugent, just before the game was suspended. Keeler for Husakowski and Louis Jean for Garvagnon. At that point, you are done. He's done. Ortiz for Yuval. The 2 subs in the 70th minute. And then Mendonça and Watson. But then you had the first half sub because of the injury in the 19th minute where Keegan Anselin came in. So you had that first half sub. You made a sub at halftime, which didn't count in a window. But then you had 2 other sub windows that you had to take care of in the second half. You're done. The 11 that you got are the 11 you got. And so the yellow cards that are out there for Chattanooga, Keegan Anselin, basically, he came in and 10 minutes later, he got a yellow for dissent. Tate Robertson got a yellow card for a foul. Mangarov got a yellow for a foul. Garvagnon got a yellow for dissent. And that was another thing, is that dissent was off the rails. Cooper Sanchez ended up with a yellow, and then Cooper, I think, got subbed off at halftime for Javi Armas. So you've got 4 people. You have 4 yellows. 3 of those players are still out for Chattanooga FC in the match itself. So do you go chasing after those 3 dudes with the yellows, Robertson and Keegan Anselin and and Daniel Mangarov? You go chasing after those folks. You get 20-plus minutes, you get another yellow from any one of those 3, and you're up a man for the however many minutes are left on the board. So Javi Armas, Jose Silva made the 1 sub at the half. That doesn't count as a window. Then you had 2 windows that were taken by Jose Silva, and he's got 1 sub left. 1 sub left, 1 window. Subbed in Aiden Torres, Moises Tablante, Rodrigo Neri for Santi Pita, DCQ, and Didi Cibrian. So substitutions, 1 for Jose Silva and 1 window, none for Chattanooga FC. 3 active players in that 11 that are out there for the final 20-plus minutes that you can't sub off. You got 3 yellows if you're Chris Nugent. You got to tread lightly. But we don't know the where. We don't know the when. But it's got to get wrapped up in a decent amount of time before everybody has to head to Fort Finley on Sunday afternoon, 1 o'clock, and that's when all the Eastern Conference games are played on Decision Day. We'll be there for that 12:30 pregame, 1 o'clock, 1:03 kick. I'll be up there for that on the network for Decision Day in MLS Next Pro. But when we know, we will let you know. So match day 26 got us to match day 27. And literally, we have no knowledge of anything when it comes to match day 26. No updates yet. But let's get you to match day 27 and what happened in Chicago, since we didn't get the chance to go down this road yesterday. So let's take a peek at what happened in the first 45 minutes at Bridgeview. Here's your highlights. Jason on the call here on the SDH Network. A great start for the Twos against Chicago Fire 2.
Long throw into Weah. Weah into the 18. He's bumped. Penalty, Atlanta. A quick throw in after Atlanta earns it in the middle third. Ryan Carmichael launches it down the line. Weah takes a big touch into the 18, takes the contact from Gene Alpha Juve, and Atlanta will go to the spot here in the 13th minute. And now Patrick Weah will go to the spot. Shuffles to the left. Weah, goal! Goal! Goal, Atlanta United 2. They take the early lead in Bridgeview in the 13th minute. Shoved off of that by Neek. One back by Atlanta. Pita over the top for Weah. Weah, top of the 18. Into the 18. Weah hits the brakes. Back to goal. Drops it off. We say goal! 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 Atlanta United 2. Patrick Weah holds it up, and Gabriel Weisse kisses it off the post. 2-0. Fleming, nowhere to go for him. He'll square it over to Juve. Back to Pratt. Pita chasing. Squared to Nagel. Poor touch from him. Weisse picks the pocket. Into the 18. Weisse into the 6. Can't get the shot off. It deflects. It's put home. Goal. 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 Atlanta United 2. Pressure creates goal number 3. Weisse drove in, was stuffed by Nagel, but stayed alive in the play. Ended up taking the ball off of Nagel. Ball kind of got stuck up under his feet, and it deflected back to Patrick Weah, who puts it home for his 9th of the season. And Atlanta's up 3 in the 42nd minute. Driven into the 6, headed away to the backside. Referee still letting them play for some reason. Finally, he blows the whistle as Tablante stuffs Pareba. All kinds of things to talk about at halftime of this one.
And he wasn't wrong. It was a 3-0. It was a 3-1 lead for Atlanta United 2 as Jason Shukulik scored from the spot in the 45th. So it's 3-1 at the break. Atlanta United rolling. So what happened in the second half? Once again, here's your highlights, courtesy of us, the SDH Network. Jason on the call.
Another little bit of history in this one, as this is the most momentous game for Atlanta United 2 in their history. Kind of fitting that Aiden Torres becomes the all-time appearance leader for Atlanta United 2 by checking into this one. Big time congrats to Aiden. Check out our 1v1 with him from earlier in the month. Neri replaced Weah. Cibrian was replaced by Torres. Header goal! 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 Atlanta United 2 off the corner. Weisse with the delivery. Masafero with the header. And Atlanta takes the 4-1 lead.
Big Sal.
73rd minute throw for Chicago. Attacking third. It's headed into the middle. Shot off the post. Quick shot from Juve went off the post. Atlanta trying to break. Chicago able to clear. Throw Atlanta in the middle third. Header came off of an Atlanta player off of a long throw. And Juve with a volley off the post and out. That's twice Chicago have hit the post. Throw in Atlanta. It was Swatter as Corey, who's into the game, and he's in behind now. Shot. Big save from Pratt. Couple of combinations. Weisse again, cutting through the middle. Tries to pop it through for Aiden Torres. It's taken away. Weisse goes down. Chicago comes away with it. Chicago shot, top of the 18. Big save, Jono. Ransom pushes it wide. Corner upcoming for Chicago. I believe Weisse's cramping. Atlanta scrapping for it. It's played out wide to the right by Neri. Here comes Carmichael, crossed in, looking for Kovac. Kovac, Neri, Kovac, big save. Pratt able to knock that one away. Atlanta back on it. Kovac nearly got on the board for the first time. Here comes Atlanta. Masafero squared back to the left. Suarez Corey. Through ball. A good one. Kovac dribbles the keeper. Kovac goal! Goal! Goal Atlanta United 2. Arif Kovac. First assist for Ignacio Suarez Corey. First goal for Arif Kovac. And Atlanta finds number 5. 5-1 Atlanta United 2. Nery, who's dropped back into a left back role in a 5-man back line for Atlanta as they try to see this out. It's 5-2 Atlanta. We're still playing. Chicago in possession. 45 seconds pass it. Oh, the referee finally looks at his watch and he says, that's enough. We're done. That'll do it. Atlanta United 2 wins 5-2 on the road at Bridgeview. A massive road win for Atlanta, which now puts them squarely in the middle of the playoff picture in the Eastern Conference.
And that's courtesy of us, once again, for the 20 minutes of chaos still left in match week 26 before we get to match week 28. When we know, we'll let you know. But right now in MLS Next Pro, Chattanooga FC actually did Atlanta United 2 a favor. They did them a solid. And now in the Eastern Conference, once again, here's the rundown. Red Bulls with Red Bulls 2 match in hand, they're at 55 points. So are the Union. They're at 27 matches played, though. Revs at 51 points, 27 matches. If it's 27 matches, then all they have is decision day left. Huntsville City Football Club knocked off Inter Miami CF2. Messi and Friends 2 get the loss. They were a man down for most of the match. Huntsville City's at 49 points, 13 wins. Chattanooga, match in hand, 20 minutes in hand. 12 wins, 48 points. Chicago Fire 2, they will be no worse than the 6. 46 points, 12 wins. Core are 7th right now at 39, 8 wins. TFC2, Toronto FC2, 38 points and 10 wins. Now, below the playoff bar, 4 teams separated by 2 points. Atlanta, 37 points, 9 wins, match in hand, 20 minutes plus decision day. Orlando City B, same number of wins. All they have is decision day, but their goal difference is horrendous. Atlanta has a 16-goal difference on Orlando City B. NYCFC 2, 35 points, 9 wins. They're in 11th. FC Cincinnati 2, 35.7 wins. They would need to win out in the midweek, and they would have to finish with 41 points to have a chance. If any kind of a tiebreaker were to happen, they have the least number of wins of anybody from 7 through 12. Out, Crown Legacy at 32 points. Messi and Friends 2 at 25. Crew 2 at 21. That's the Eastern Conference. There are games in the midweek to get everybody squared away. FC Cincinnati 2 tomorrow takes on Red Bulls 2 at Northern Kentucky. That's at 7:30. Red Bulls 2, if they take care of business, could knock out FC Cincinnati 2 from the playoffs. Then you end up with the Town and Whitecaps at PayPal Park, basically Earthquakes 2. And Whitecaps 2, that's at 10 o'clock on MLSNextPro.com. That's tomorrow. That gets everybody short of Atlanta and Chattanooga to 1 match to go. Then, Sunday, all the Eastern matches are at 1 o'clock. Atlanta United 2 in Chattanooga. Once again, we'll have that one on the network. 12:30 pregame, 1:03 kick. I'll be there. Crew 2 and Fire 2. Crew 2 could really put a wrench in the Fire's attempts to try to get to the 5 or the 4 with a win. Core and Huntsville City. Huntsville City could do Atlanta United a solid by getting a result against Core at Wicks Family Field and Joe Davis Stadium. Messi and Friends 2 are hosting the Revs 2 at the Erector Set. Red Bulls 2, after having played in the midweek at home, on the road at Northern Kentucky, are at home to take on Toronto FC 2. Red Bulls 2 could do Atlanta United 2 a favor. Although I think they have more wins and the tiebreaker would be a little difficult, but they could keep the numbers at 38. Orlando City B, FC Cincinnati 2. FC Cincinnati 2 could do Atlanta United 2 a favor if they take out Orlando City B at Osceola Heritage Park. Philadelphia Union 2 at home at Subaru Park, hosting NYCFC 2. The Union 2 could do a favor, and they need to keep the beat with Red Bulls to keep NYCFC out of the discussion. That's where we are heading into, the midweek. and B, match day 28. That's where we are with the twos. And that's the chaos that's attached. So it's going to be wild. Oh, boy. Post-world toilet, blah, 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 blah. Wow, that's an interesting bot name. Post-world toilet, and then you end up with, like, letters and numbers. Let's see. Spam, scam, bot, or tampering. Yes. Next. Bot. Next. Viewer. Solicitation. Let's see if I could spell solicitation without thinking. Because it's 23 characters. There's the 23 characters. Submit report. So report has been submitted. Okay. So that's where we are with Atlanta United 2 and the chaos that reigns. It's going to be a race between now and whenever to get to the 20 minutes of chaos to get us to match day 28. So that's the update with MLS Next Pro. Champions League is today. We'll get you into your juice boxes and let you know what's going on there. U20s, we got to talk about that before we get into our conversation with Jason Stevens at the bottom of the hour. It is yesterday. So today in Champions League, you have the league phase continuing. The numbers have changed a little bit from soccer over there last night. 2 at 12:45. Atalanta and Club Brugge. Atalanta a -109. Club Brugge is a +266. Your draw is a +286. Real Madrid has to travel to Azerbaijan to take on Kairat Almaty. And it looks like Real Madrid might be changing formations, and there's going to be some rotation of starters in this one. Kairat Almaty is a +2067. Real Madrid a -1,000, and your draw is basically a +1,007. 3 o'clock is where all the other 7 matchups are. Atletico Madrid, big favorite against Eintracht Frankfurt at a -222. Bodo Glimt, again, hosting Spurs north of the Arctic Circle at a +110. For your road favorite, Bodo Glimt to +223, draws a +276. Chelsea and Benfica, the return of the chosen one. And he has been pushing the buttons and poking as many bears as humanly possible in all of his press opportunities. He maintains that he himself is the best coach Chelsea has ever had, and no one will be better than him until they win 4 titles. Three. How many titles have I won? 3. So until somebody wins 4, he considers himself to be the best that Chelsea's ever had. Chelsea's a -156 at home. Benfica's a +409. Draws a +305. Keep an eye on the draw, because my gut tells me that this could be one of the ugliest games ever. Basically bunkering for 90 minutes. You've got 2 walls of 5. And good luck to Chelsea in this one. Good luck trying to batter through it. This one could get ugly. And then if it happens that Benfica gets any kind of a result, you know what the post-game press conference is going to be about. They couldn't beat me. I came in here. We were the underdog, and they couldn't beat me. Little Benfica couldn't be beaten by big old Chelsea. Todd Bowley goes and storms off at the end of the match out of the owner's box. Galatasaray and Liverpool. Liverpool on the road is a -172. Galatasaray is a +400 as a home dog. Draw is a +358. By the way, Galatasaray fans set off fireworks outside the Liverpool hotel in the middle of the night. I'm shocked. I don't understand how they would do something like that. Mentioned Spurs and Bodo Glimt. News out of Spurs. Solanke is undergoing surgery. Romero is ruled out. Dominic Solanke, according to Tom Allnut at the Times, he's having a small procedure. No procedure is small. I don't care what it is. No procedure is small. He may miss the next 2 Champions League fixtures, and Christian Romero is withdrawn as precaution, in quotation marks. Thomas Frank has confirmed that Solanke is undergoing surgery on his ankle, which is also never good. He would have more news about the time frame of the recovery after the international break. He's going to miss the game against Leeds on Saturday, may not be back in time for Monaco on October 22nd, although Thomas Frank has said, I don't expect it to be long. Yet to start a game this season, came off the bench against Manchester City and Burnley, hasn't featured in any of the Spurs' last 6. Asked if it had been a wasted month, Frank said that would be the easy answer, but added, quote, no one wants a surgery, no matter how small it is. That's what I'm saying. There is no such thing as a small procedure. Richarlison likely to continue in Solanke's place against Bodo Glimt, even if he has admitted he needs to manage Richarlison's minutes because of previous injury. Randall Colomowani hasn't traveled, dead leg. Matisse Tell left out of the Champions League squad. Kevin Danso expected to come in for Romero in central defense. 75 miles north of the Arctic Circle. Advancing to the Europa League final with a 2-0 win over Kjetil Knutsen's team back in May. Spurs dominated the first leg at home and then felt shortchanged by a 3-1 victory. And the capacity at the Aspmyra, 8,000 and an artificial surface. Well, you kind of need that. Thomas Frank said he'd experienced Nordsjælland's turf surface. It's written as plastic in the Times. It's turf. When he was in charge of Brøndby in Denmark, brushed off suggestions he would change his approach. He said, quote, no, not really. No, not really a change. It's fine. They're good here. They're very good at home. For me, there's a lot of talk about the pitch. I rather want to praise the team, the Bodo team, and their coach and what they do. Bodo have won Norway's Eliteserien. That's their top flight. 4 out of the last 5 years made names for themselves, beating Lazio, Porto, Celtic, and Roma. Drew away to Slavia Prague in the Champions League opener. Bodo will view Tottenham as one of their best opportunities for a win. Spurs beat Villarreal in their first game, and you get a win there, it probably gets you into the top 8. 5 clean sheets in 8 matches this year. They haven't, according to the Times, had a whole lot of spark creatively. Solanke, James Madison, Dejan Kulusevski are all injured. Young-Min Son obviously sold to LAFC. So that's another one of your 3 o'clockers. So keep an eye out for that. Inter and Slavia Prague. Inter favored at a minus 370. Draws a plus 507. Slavia Prague's a plus 905. Marseille and Ajax. Marseille a minus 227. Ajax a plus 567. And Paphos is a plus 1807 going up against Bayern Munich, who are a minus 714. Basically what that means is that if you wanted to put 100 juice boxes down on Bodo Glimt, you'd get 223 back if you won. If they drew and you did the same thing, you'd get 276 back. If you did that to Spurs, you'd get 10 back. Paphos, 1807. So if you put 100 juice boxes down and Paphos pulled out an upset win over Bayern Munich, you'd get 1,807 juice boxes back. I'm not going there. Don't know about you, but I ain't going there. That's not happening. That's the rundown of Champions League today. So a lot of decided favorites. Champions League is today and tomorrow, by the way, if you're in the league phase as it continues. So league phase, I'm intrigued by Real Madrid and Kairat Almaty, of course, for the obvious reason. You're having to fly to Azerbaijan. And how do you respond after getting thumped by Atleti on the weekend and then getting a turnaround and have to go to Azerbaijan for your trouble? But yes, Galatasaray fans set off fireworks outside Liverpool in the middle of the night. Bentancur is also close to agreeing to a new Spurs deal as well. So keep an eye on that. Jared Bowen yesterday got West Ham out of a goalless effort, and then you got a draw for West Ham. So it's something for Nuno. It's something. So you gotta keep an eye out on that as to what happened in the Premier League. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on any of the news and notes and anything else that's going on in the Prem. Jurgen Klopp, by the way, was on this side of the Atlantic keeping an eye on things at Red Bull. He's like, no, I'm good. I have no intention of going back to coach. I mean, obviously never say never, but never say never. Right now, Jurgen Klopp is saying never. He's good. Arsenal, William Saliba signed a new long-term deal, joined from Saint-Etienne in 2019. He has now extended his contract until 2030. It was due to run until 2027, and now it's extended to 2030, and it now is where the where Arsenal wants to tie him up even with interest from Real Madrid. So Saliba is in the barn until 2030. And I know that this might surprise you, but Chris Wood from Nottingham Forest has warned of a potential player strike if safeguards are not implemented to protect footballers' welfare. Remember the FIFA Pro story that we were talking about, the FIFA Pro 51-page presentation? They're playing too many matches. 12 World Cup teams analyzed failed to meet the recommended 28-day off-season rest period. PSG, I think, only had 7. FIFA Pro engaged in legal action against FIFA, accusing the governing body of failing to consult on the international calendar, leading to strained relations. Despite FIFA mandating a 21-day off-season break, FIFA Pro's data revealed many teams, including 7 of those analyzed for the Club World Cup, did not adhere to that minimum rest period. And so Chris Wood is like, yeah, we might go on strike. We might go on strike. We'll keep you posted, but we might go on strike. So you have that to pay attention to also. Take the tour and see if there's any other news in here before we get into the U20s and before we get into the economics of sport coming up at the bottom of the hour. But it was a big day for the U20s last night, getting 9 on the board against New Caledonia. And that was kind of expected, considering that this was New Caledonia's first ever run in the tournament. And they are 2 wins away. As a matter of fact, they are 2 wins away from actually getting into the World Cup, going through the Intercontinental Playoff. So that would be intriguing, to say the very least. But New Caledonia yesterday, going up against the United States, it was a long day for them. It was a 9-1 final for the U.S. U20s. And it was a lot of goals in a very short period of time. Today, by the way, keep an eye out on FS1 and FS2. But we'll get into, after our Jason Stevens interview, we will let you know where to watch, what to watch it, and how to watch it. But today, your juice box is in the U20s in Chile. 4 o'clock, Egypt and New Zealand. Egypt is favored at a -116. New Zealand a +285. Draws a +238. Panama and Ukraine. Ukraine is favored at a -122. Draws a +245. Panama is a +304. Your 2 at 7 o'clock. Chile and Japan. Japan a +127. Chile a +204. Draws a +220. South Korea and Paraguay. Paraguay is a +145. And the draws a +216. South Korea is a +175. I have not seen the Miguel Almiron documentary yet. I have heard nothing but raves. If you've seen the Hoff on social media, he got to share a couple of pictures with him and Diego Pinzon, both friends of the show, friends of the network. So we will effort someone to come on to discuss said documentary about Miguel Almiron. We'll get that one squared away, hopefully in short order. But big night for the U20s last night for U.S. soccer. And Kromoski ends up with a hat trick, record-setting 9-1 win for the U.S. Most goals ever scored by the USYNT in a U20 setting. Winning at the Estadio El Teniente, set records for most goals scored, largest margin of victory in a U20 Men's World Cup match. Benya Kromoski became just the 3rd American player to score 3 goals in a match. USA get France on Thursday at 4 o'clock Eastern time. That one is on FS2. So the goals themselves, and here's your notes on the match. 9-1 win sets a new record for both goals scored, margin of victory. Previously scored 3 times. 6-0 win against Turkey in 93. 6-1 against Poland in 07. 6-0 against New Zealand in 2017. Just the 4th team to score 9 goals in a U20 match. Kromoski became the 3rd U.S. player to get a hat trick at the FIFA U20 World Cup, and first to do so in the first half. Kromoski joins Chris Claris from 93 and Freddie Adu in 2007. Kromoski had 5 goal contributions. The hat trick, combined with Nolan Norris's brace, also marks the 3rd time the U.S. has had 2 multi-goal scorers in a U20 match, following Claris and Miles Joseph, and Adu and Danny Zatella in 2007. Nico Shakiris took his career U20 World Cup total to 2 with his 7th minute goal. Previously scored in the 2-0 win against Slovakia in the group finale of the 23 tournament. Frankie Westfield had a goal and assist. Taha Habrun and Cole Campbell had the scoring also for the United States in goals 8 and 9. Second time the USA received goals from 6 different players in a U20. The other was the 6-0 win against New Zealand 2017. 7 in the first half, 7-0 at the break, 2-1 in the second half. Antoine Samane scored in the 70th minute for the lone New Caledonian goal. And your lineups, Beaudry Norris, Bombino comes in as a sub, Josh Winder, Ethan Kohler, Frankie Westfield, Benja Kremoski, Matthew Corcoran came in for 20 minutes. Brooklyn Raines, Pedro Soma came in for a half. Nico Shakiris, Taha Habrun came in for 30. Cole Campbell, Marcus Zambrano, Xavier Gosso, Peyton Miller came in for 30. Not used. Duran Faree, Reed Baker Whiting, Noah Cobb, Luke Brennan, and Gavin Beavers obviously not available, considering that he is headed back to Barcelona. Stats summary on the night: 29 shots to 4 for the U.S., 13 shots on target, 3 saves for New Caledonia, 1 save for the United States. 15 corner kicks on the night, 14 of them went to the United States. 23, and this was the interesting number for me, 23 fouls called, and it was basically down the middle. 12 fouls to the U.S., 11 for New Caledonia, and only the 1 yellow card from Omar Abdul Qadir Artan from Somalia, the man in the middle. A 54th minute yellow to Joseph Naiselin from New Caledonia. But 29 shots on the night, 13 on target, 9-1 win for the United States to kick off their U20 tournament in Chile against New Caledonia. When you look at the standings, I figured that in the United States group, New Caledonia would be the team that you know that you would have to put a number upon in case you have to get down to tiebreakers and goal difference down the line. Currently, Japan and Chile in Group A, each with 3 points. Japan beat Egypt 2-0. Chile beat New Zealand 2-1. Group B, Paraguay, 3-2 winner over Panama. Ukraine 2-1 winner over South Korea. Group C, Morocco shut out Spain. Brazil and Mexico had a 2-2 draw. Group D, Argentina, 3-1 winner over Cuba. Italy with a 1-0 win over Australia. Right now, the U.S. obviously lead the group with a goal difference of +8. France beat South Africa 2-1 in the other game in Group E. Colombia, Norway, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia. 1-0 wins for Colombia and Norway over the Saudis and Nigeria, respectively. How it works is the top 2 teams from each group go into the knockouts plus the top 4 third-place teams. We got a while for that. But still, we are at the beginning of match day 2. So match day 2 in the U20s. Keep an eye on that on FS1 and FS2. So that's your rundown there about a very, very big night in U.S. soccer for the youth national team. Now, the stories that I kind of wanted to get into, once again, it's the news of the day. And one of the larger stories, once again, sadly continues to be Sheffield Wednesday. Now, according to our friends at Talk Sport, Sheffield Wednesday players are threatening to strike. Once again, from our friend Jack Cunningham at Talk Sport. Now, the way things have gone so far, we do get to talk about this a little bit with Jason coming up in a couple of minutes, and how Davon Chansiri is still allowed to function as an owner, and it's not handed over in some kind of administration or receivership or what have you. That Chansiri right now, if you're a fan of Sheffield Wednesday, I apologize, because of everything that he is putting you through. And if I could find a black and gold kit or scarf or anything, I would wear it. We'd have it here in the office, and I would wear it. So right now, because of all of the administration, all of the transfer embargoes, all the things going on with Sheffield Wednesday, they are not last in the championship. Sheffield United is, because of points deductions that have been given coming into this season. That's the only reason Sheffield Wednesday is not at the bottom of the table. Right now, they've won once in their first 7. They've got a goal difference of -7. But because Sheffield United has been blown out, right now, 1 win, 6 losses, first 7 matches, goal difference -11. That's the only reason Sheffield Wednesday is not at the bottom of the table, and they haven't had any kind of points deduction from the league as of yet. So Sheffield Wednesday players may refuse to train and protest over more unpaid wages this month. Once again, 13 first-team players left because they could. Rules say if you don't get paid in 2 windows, you can rip up your deal. That's how Josh Windass ended up at Wrexham, to give you an idea. There's a concern the club wouldn't be able to field a team of senior players. Not a single penny was spent on transfers because they're under a fee restriction embargo till the end of the 26-27 winter window because of late payments. Danny Roll left. He was the manager that kept them afloat. One of the stands had to be closed because of an order from the local council that it wasn't safe to be in. September wages not paid on time. As a result, understood to be considering whether to refuse to train following their clash with Birmingham tonight. Delayed payment, once again, started in 2020. Club docked 12 points for breaching profit and sustainability. Won promotion of the championship in 23. Placed under embargo for failed payments to His Majesty's Royalty and Customs. That's the IRS over there. You ain't paying your taxes, HMRC is going to come after you. And they don't just sit there and smile and nod and take a high and hearty handshake. So, and that was when Dejan Chansiri in 23 basically said a public statement where he wanted fans to contribute toward their tax debt. He said if 20,000 people gave £100 and that's $2 million, it'd be clear so we can finish it. That'd cover everything. HMRC and wages. You do not understand how important this is to me and my family. Well, apparently the Sheffield Wednesday fans do. I don't know about everybody else. But Dejan Chansiri, it's kind of like, maybe if y'all, and this was back in 23, maybe if y'all paid it, then we'd be cool. Fans looked at him like, bruh, that's not how this works. You do not understand how important this club is to me and my family. I've been here 9 years. It's a part of my life. The debt was settled. October last year, they got another embargo for the same offense. June of 25, they were charging the club with failing to fulfill their obligations after the players weren't paid on time in full in March and May. EFL still want Chansiri to sell, despite fan protests and interest from John Textor. EFL had a statement back in August. Barry Bannon, the team captain, was interviewed before this latest payment delay, said that he made some excellent points about the club when he signed a new deal in the summer. Said it's a mental thing. And then once again, the Sheffield Wednesday's championship clash with Coventry is on the Talk Sports, and that is on the weekend. So you got that going on at Sheffield Wednesday, sadly, which is stupid. And so that's where Sheffield Wednesday is currently at present, and it ain't pretty, and it ain't going to get any prettier until something happens. And I don't know if you heard this yesterday when we were on Soccer Over There. Sheffield Wednesday staff were emailed about £1,000 wages a day before payday. Once again, Paul Hurst from the Times. So basically, a day before payday, folks were emailed, yeah, you're only getting £1,000. Staff on the non-football side told that they would receive about £1,000 academy players and scholars paid in full. 5th time in the past 7 months that they're not getting full salaries on time. Majority of the first team squad not paid their full monthly wage. FIFA rules state that if a club do not pay a player on time twice, they can rip up their deal, unless the club settles up within 15 days of the due payday. That was Josh Windass. That was what we were talking about. Michael Smith ended up going to Preston North End on a free. Latest 2 embargoes issued last Friday are in relation to debts still owed to another club for unpaid transfers and to other, quote, football creditors, end quote. Wednesday manager Henrik Peterson has told the club he will not accept any of his wage until he knows his support staff have received 100% of their salaries. Henrik Peterson, he's a mensch. Wednesday also didn't pay their employees either in full or on time in March, May, June, or July, and on several occasions in previous years. The email said, quote, here's the email, forwarded to the Times. With the September payday due tomorrow, sorry to say that once again, full salaries will not be fulfilled on time. We completely understand your frustration on receiving this email, and we can only be as transparent as the situation allows and based on the current information available. We can confirm that all staff will receive an initial payment of £1,000 with the outstanding balance to be paid at the earliest opportunity. As in previous months, there'll be an emergency fund to best support immediate further payments to staff where possible. Please speak directly with your line manager with any requests, and available funds will be distributed in a fair and balanced way. All staff will receive September salaries in full, but unfortunately, we're not in a position to confirm an exact date. We're all hoping for a positive update, which will be communicated to staff as soon as it's received. Chen Siri has been asked, nay demanded, to sell the club for about £30 million. But Chen Siri has suggested he's unwilling to leave, even though several parties are interested. Chen Siri had threatened to turn Hillsborough into a block of flats after being hurt by the criticism of his regime. Sources claim that the threat was not to be taken seriously. The Sheffield South Member of Parliament joined protests last month, and they urged the newly created independent football regulator to investigate Wednesday's plight and remove Chen Siri from being the owner. Director of the Supporters Trust said he was concerned about employees' ability to pay their bills. He's calling for the regulator to act on this. And, of course, Sheffield Wednesday declined comment. So keep an eye on Sheffield Wednesday. And, yeah, keep an eye on that. Bart, who's in this morning on the U20s. And it is true. I mean, this was what you were supposed to do. Bart says it's hard to take anything from the match given level of competition. Credit to the New Caledonian keeper for keeping the U.S. to just 9. Disappointing to concede a goal, but the 9 scored good for the standings. Love the variety of scores and the ways to score. And Bart still has not gotten his email from FIFA about World Cup, the cup that the whole world is chasing after next year and the tickets that are associated therein. So I don't know how the rest of you are when it comes to your tickets, but Bart still hadn't found his email yet. Has not gotten his email yet. It is that time. It is the final half hour of the show here on Tuesday. And this is where we go over to London, England, and we catch up with our friend Jason Stevens, find out about the economics of sport. Yes, we do talk about Sheffield Wednesday at the end of this discussion, but once again, our master's class continues about how multi-club ownership continues to impact what's going on, plus legislation in one country that is debating the idea of an MCO and how that MCO idea would not work any further with an exception. There's always fine print. Look for the fine print, and we found the fine print with this particular deal. Here's our conversation with Jason Stevens as we continue finding out about the economics of sport. And Jason is, once again, in London, and he's doing a long commute. So you'll notice that the background might be the same as a part of his commute for the next couple of months or so because Jason's gone back to school. So here's our conversation with Jason Stevens in the economics of soccer as it continues in our masterclass here on SDH AM. And our education continues into the economics of soccer multi-club ownership with our friend Jason Stevens. Okay, so this week, when you and I were talking last week to set up this week, and you had mentioned multi-club ownership in France, it's almost like folks were reading your notes because in between the time that we last caught up with each other and now, apparently, and this is from our friends at goal.com, Neil Banerjee writes, multi-club ownership under threat in France after a member of parliament presented a cross-party bill that could ban timeshare control of football clubs, potentially affecting Chelsea and Manchester City stakes in Ligue 1. Cockrell warns the law is aimed at ensuring sporting risk and equality of opportunity while punishing non-compliance with heavy fines and competition bans. So the proposal, it was a bill unveiled at banning that kind of ownership of professional clubs in France, supported by nearly 90 MPs from all parties. The law seeks to prevent a single owner from controlling multiple clubs, extending powers to France's financial watchdog, which is the DNCG, who you never want to get mad, and to block these kinds of deals. Non-compliance could lead to fines worth 2% of global turnover and bans from competitions. Clubs already under multi-ownership would be exempt to protect the current balance of French football. And so that came out last week, and it could impact as many as 10 Ligue 1 clubs, PSG, Lyon, Monaco, Nice, Strasbourg, Toulouse, 7 in Ligue 2, where you had Eagle Football Holdings multi-ownership, and we've had our conversations about that. Then Red Stars collapse under 777 to highlight the risk. So what are you thinking when you saw that come to pass when we were talking about it?
I laughed. It's just a politician trying to get some brownie points, okay? Don't get me wrong. We have seen that multi-club ownership in France, in some of the clubs that you've highlighted. There has been some trouble, probably more trouble in the French league than there has been in any other country. So, yeah, 7-7 partners, Red Star, John Textor and Lyon, Strasbourg and Chelsea. That's not financial trouble. That's just, battle of political correctness in terms of Strasbourg don't want to be made to feel like they're Chelsea's feeder club. But at the same time, all the investment that's going into improving facilities and stuff like that, our club's happy to receive that. And then you've got to ask yourself with regards to Strasbourg and Chelsea, there is a food chain in football, whether we like it or not. A lot of the clubs in the Premier League have to succumb to Real Madrid. If Real Madrid come knocking for your players, those are going to go there. And it's no different to France, Italy and stuff like that. The bigger clubs in the Premier League come, we just know our place in the food chain. But then you've got Monaco with Russian money. You've had Bordeaux with Gerard Lopez. You've had the Pacific Media Group, and you're right. There's a number of clubs across the French pyramid. But ultimately, there's 22 clubs in French football that have links to MCO. So let's just draw a line under his key statement there. It's not going to interfere with existing multi-club ownership models, right? So that has pretty much ruled out 40% of French football as we speak. So, yeah, I get it that you've got to maybe toughen up the rules with regards to protecting your clubs, all right? Because, some of these lesser leagues where they are feeder clubs in some of these MCO models, whilst these models actually, are quite clear in terms of you're a lower level, you're feeding the big club, etc., then I get it. There needs to be some rules that can help protect them. But the reality is, and if we actually analyse the amount of transfers that move between clubs, it's very limited, really, in the essence of players. Chelsea have probably had more the other way, right? Sending Strasbourg more players than what Strasbourg have sent Chelsea. There's one player I've seen, or two players that have come over to Chelsea in like 2.5 years, but there's 6 that Chelsea have sent over this season. And I bet the Strasbourg fans were happy when they qualified for European competition this year, So swings and roundabouts, but it's like anything. We create a narrative out of something that could be perceived negative, but there are some positives in MCO space, albeit in the French landscape. There's a few negative stories that have clouded people's perceptions of it.
Yeah, and Caleb Wiley is one of those that folks in our footprint know. There was a property of Chelsea under contract with Chelsea, goes to Strasbourg. So that pathway they are familiar with when it comes to going from Chelsea to a Strasbourg to help things out there. The legal disputes were what were highlighting the risk. Lyon, you've got creditor challenges. Textor owes 82 million euro of multiple countries. 777's debt restructuring. CFG's acquisition debts could breach financial fair play rules given that they own Troy in Ligue 2. So, if this happens, it's late 25, early 26. And you mentioned Strasbourg. Strasbourg could face restrictions on future dealings. And so France's intent is to regulate MCOs, safeguarding fairness in sporting competition. But to your point, the fine print is, we're going to keep the current structure as it is. Anybody that wants in the future, you can't do it. But right now, to protect what is theirs so it doesn't fall down, and we know how dodgy things are economically with the Ligue 1, it's like we're going to protect the status quo, but if you want in later, the answer is no.
Yeah, but the other side is, we've got to ask ourselves some serious questions, right? Is French football suffering because of MCOs, or is it suffering from wider issues like mismanagement or broadcasting deals? Let's be fair, their broadcasting deal is probably the worst in European football for such a, potentially a main product in the top 5. That's nothing to do with MCOs. That's poor negotiation from the management of the league, stroke management of the clubs that put in there. They had a reasonable deal. I didn't say a great deal. They had a reasonable deal when BN Sports were there, but because of the links to QSI and obviously Paris Saint-Germain being owned by QSI, people thought it was unfair, that PSG had the lion's share of the deal. But the reality is, since then, the deal that they had on that table at that time actually was a lot better than what they've seemed to have collected since then. So they shot themselves in the foot. And then, they bought in CVC as a commercial partner, which is selling themselves down the line for immediate short-term gains. All right, we have seen the commercial, collectively, the commercial income has grown by 30% in the last 12 months, which is, in that sense, that's not bad. And that's led to a collective turnover of 19%, in the last year. But on the other side, expenses have grown by 15%, which has led to League One football having a collective loss of £1 billion, 24-25. So is that the fault of MCOs, or do MCOs potentially offer some security? Now, what we're saying is security. A lot of these MCOs are private equity-based groups, and they do have money, which is potentially there for the operations, right? And yes, there will be a return of investment that's expected to come, whether that's short-term or long-term. But, by closing the door to that potential ownership type, I'd be interested to know how many wealthy owners are interested in French football full stop without the MCO groups. Look, we know in England, right, the valuations of football clubs, etc., going through the roof. There's not going to be too many wealthy billionaires, an individual, that if you close the door to MCO groups, that market may stifle everything, the growth of the game and especially the valuations, etc. So, look, on one stand, I get it. It's a political point to make, but I mean, the reality of it in French football and the desperate need it is for finances, I'll be very surprised if that actually becomes a motion, that's for sure.
Then the other country that we wanted to focus on this time around is Italy, and Italy has American influence as a part of their makeup in Serie A, but then you also mentioned that they have just as many folks who are interested in Serie B, Serie C, and Serie D. American influence is working their way over into the Italian theater right now as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, across the Italian landscape, A, B, C, D leagues, we've got 39 different clubs that have connections. Their owners have connections to a second club at all levels of the game. And again, if we break that down even further to America, North America, I mean, 22 are linked. But that could be because of historical links as well, right? We know there's a lot of American, Italian owners, wealthy owners as well, that share borders, etc. So, there could be a lot of links in there. And let's be fair, when I'm looking at the Italian owners, stroke American owners, they do have clubs in America as well. So there is actual synergies there, which, in one side, you can see there's an emotional link there from both sides of the water, right, on there for me. The problem with Italian football clubs is that the infrastructure, if you're looking at a return of investment, unless you can actually rebuild some of the infrastructure that's there, stadiums, training facilities, then the return of investment is going to be very, very hard. So it's going to have to be an emotional attachment that you're investing in these clubs. Just look at the trouble that, Jerry Cardinal at Redbird Partners is having with AC Milan and Inter Milan in trying to get a new stadium. And you've got two of the most iconic brands of Italian football, and they're struggling to get a stadium which is much needed. Not just for the football ecosystem of Italy, but they've got the Euros as well coming up in 2030. Sorry, not 2030, 2028. And they've already been threatened by UEFA. If you don't sort your infrastructure out, we could strip you of that tournament. So there's a lot of politics in Italy when it comes to infrastructure and granting permissions to build infrastructure. It's a shame really, because that has cost Italy status as the #1 league in the world, right? Because back in the 90s, Serie A was the place to play your football. It had everything, you had the sun, the seas, the sights, it had the fan base, and it had the best players in the world, and it had those connections to the Central American countries, which enabled a free flow of player and movement. And it was only I would say, the their lack of vision in taking football forward. You know, when the Premier League got back in '94, when they were coming to fruition, they sat down and they sort of analysed the market in the next 20 years and said, look, we need this, we need seated stadiums, we need new stadiums, we need better training infrastructure, you know. And that was a constant review process that had buy-in from the government. So, you know, when you look at the Premier League as a brand on a global scale, the Premier League is the UK's #1 global brand. It's bigger than some of the major institutions that have been around for over 100, 150 years. So, you know, but the government saw that and they backed it. In Italy, it's more local, and they've just got territorial fights. Political parties are changing all the time. There's no doubt there's, you know, I would say criminal organisation influences in certain patches, especially when it comes to some of the big groups, without actually, you know, naming any, but we all know them. So, yeah, Italy has fallen from grace. Will it get back up there? I could see that struggling with France in the next few years. The only thing that's keeping it afloat at the moment is because there's such a, I would say, the clubs in Italy, they're very competitive because they're all on a level field in terms of investment at the moment. Juventus have fallen from grace because of the corruption allegations they've suffered, which has now opened the door for the other clubs. And obviously, with AC Milan, you know, American influence being, I would say, sustainable rather than reckless. And we've had a period of time where the Chinese were a bit reckless with Inter Milan, and they obviously lost control of the club. And then you've got local owned clubs, which have, you know, over time, steady investment have helped them become more competitive. So I would actually say the Italian league is probably the most competitive league now in terms of the top of the table, because they could have probably 5, 6, 7 clubs that could win the league. Like the Premier League says, I would argue and say, oh, yeah, but we've got 5, 6, 7 teams that could win the league. But the reality is it's only going to be the same 3 or 4 that do. But yeah, I mean, roundabout way, I hope I've sort of tackled that one.
Oh yeah, and the idea that in Serie A specifically, you're dealing with principalities, you're dealing with those provincial governments, you're dealing with historic sites, and we're talking like centuries worth of history that you would have to figure out. Okay, am I whose wheels do I grease? Am I dealing with a historical preservation issue? And when you run up against that issue specifically, a lot of folks that are in the these Serie A cities, they're like, nope, you can't, because you're having to uproot too much of what we have as a part of our history here. And so you're dealing with that in addition to all the governments too.
Yeah, but also we can take that a little bit further. We've got the fan groups. We know that the ultras really control football, especially in Italy. And some of the bigger French teams, you know, that's got to be a put off to investment as well, knowing that your playing coach in Marseille last year, you know, the ultras stormed the bus, beat up the head coach. They set fire to the CEO's house, you know. I wouldn't say that's common practice, but the way that the ultra groups actually voice their discontent, it always seems to be an aggressive intent on it somewhere along the lines. And it's no different in Italy. I mean, tourism for football fandom in Italy has fallen down massively over the last 5 to 10 years. And, you know, when you look at places like Germany, you know, it's quite cheap to go and watch there, and it's relatively safe. And you go to England, which is 40% of every match day is a tourism ticket, you know, so it's those other factors contribute massively to the state of play in terms of becoming a viable and an attractive investment opportunity.
One of the other issues that has kind of popped up that I wanted to kind of wrap up with this week is the continuing saga of Sheffield Wednesday. And it appears the staff were emailed about £1,000 wages a day before payday. Players and staff were told that they will not get their full wages for the 5th time in 7 months, leaving some struggling to pay bills. And this is from Paul Hurst at the Times. Dave Chansiri, once again, the chairman, has come in for more criticism. Employees told in an email today that they're not getting full salaries on time. Staff on the non-football side of the operation have been told they're going to receive £1,000, while academy players and scholars will be paid in full. The payment is of such a small amount to non-football staff will leave many of them scrambling. This is Hurst's words from the Times. FIFA rules state that if a club do not pay a player on time twice, he or she can rip up their contract unless the club in question pay the player within 15 days of that due payday. And then you get into FIFA's regulations. And so Josh Windass, Callum Peterson, they trigger those clauses. They go to Wrexham and to a club that, as a member of the Dons, trusted AFC Wimbledon. I am not supposed to say by name, so I'm not going to do it. 13 players left Wednesday in the summer. Club are now under 5 separate transfer embargoes. The latest 2 issued last Friday are in relation to debt still owed to another club for unpaid transfers and to other football creditors. This is the situation that sadly continues to roll through here when it comes to owners and owners tests. And it's like, I know a lot of folks are probably wondering, why hasn't the EFL taken over here in a situation like this, because of the history that they've seen with a guy like Defon Chansiri?
Bottom line is, when we look at football governance in the English football, we've got the Premier League and then we've got the EFL. And, they do have owners and directors tests. But, the problem is with any owners and directors test is that, John, you could show me all your bank accounts and everything, and you could show me that you've got funds to run a football club for the next 10 years. But once you've shown me that evidence, how do I know what your emotional intent is? Are you definitely going to be committed to that club for the next 10 years? I mean, ultimately, in the current owners and directors test, all you have to do is show finance for 2 years. That's it. So after that 2 years, is it a rolling 2 years that you have to show finance for? No, the answer is not. It's only when you initially take over, it's 2 years. And then after that, it's, have you got funds for the season? Yeah, you can showcase that in any format you like. But what we have got now, we've got the independent football regulator that's passed bill in the UK. So we expect that to potentially come into, come into play November, December of this year. Now, okay, when we look at what real impact is it going to have when it actually is in play, we still don't know. But one of the things it will be doing is that looking after the owners and directors test for new owners coming into football. It doesn't help the existing clubs that are suffering at the moment, but hopefully, will provide a better protection ring. But again, if we go back to the Reading owner, right, Di Young, when he looked after them, he came in, he started splashing his cash about. He, upgraded the training ground. He built a beautiful training ground over there. He upgraded parts of the stadium. All right, the stadium's already in a good state anyway because of the former owner. But, he had every intent of getting into the Premier League. And then what happened? Still nobody knows. I had that conversation with him one day maybe, but he just then threw his toys out of his pram, stopped on the investing, and then Reading went on a downward spiral. And then, it managed to stay afloat. One of your American friends, Rob Hurrick, has managed to grab hold of it, etc. But Rob doesn't come without any controversy. Do you know what I mean? He's an interesting character. Love him to death. I've met him actually a couple of times. He's a real interesting character. I'll leave that one there. But at the same time, how can any governance regulate someone that changes his mind? After a period of time, you can't. And the problem with Sheffield Wednesday is that, and I think, there must be a law that comes in that if you stop investing in the club and its operations in its current form, that you take over and you actually make a reduction in staffing costs, in personnel, and they're below a minimum requirement that's expected to run a football club, then you run the risk of losing that license, losing that club. And I think we've got to be harsher. And I think all football's got to be harsh with owners like that. You've got to have, whether it's called a golden share, whether it's called something, but there is power that actually does lay with somebody, some authoritative body. Maybe you can look after it, John. And you can come in and just rule it. It'll be good. You'll give him some hard questions, John. You'll give him some hard questions.
Yes, that's kind of the idea with the hard questions, because I think that there, as much as we all want the game to grow. I think that's an understood. But at the same time, I think we need to understand all of the other machinations that have gotten the game to this place, so we can figure out, okay, what's wrong? Where can we go? What do we need to understand? Because there's a lot of stuff that folks who have bank accounts that have far more zeros to the left of the decimal place than a lot of us are doing right now. And that's why we like to drop in with you and kind of get the lay of the land overseas, so we have a better understanding of it. Because as the U.S. becomes more integrated with its soccer and its talent and its transactions, we kind of need to know the lay of the land. And that's why we call you every week.
Yeah, I mean, it's changing. I mean, the football landscape, I mean, I've just started a university course. When I say I've started, I've been doing it for 7 years, but the new semester, the academic year started today. And one thing I said to my students is that there's no point reading a textbook about football business, because I guarantee you, by the time we get to December, the end of your first semester, we'll have 3 or 4 new laws in the game, which is going to reshape it, because something would have happened which enables the landscape to evolve, because the commercial side of it is growing so fast. The game is globalized. And we're talking now that football clubs, on average, are looking at, well, in the Premier League now, pretty much all the clubs are going to be part of the MCO group and multi-sports network group in the distant future. And I know, speaking to a few clubs in the recent weeks, that big clubs like Arsenal are going to be joining that foray. Liverpool have just had a due diligence with Getafe completed, so that's going to be announced soon. There's talk of Spurs being bought out by an American consortium.
Yes.
And, that's going to be interesting, because Spurs are actually playing that down, but yet they removed the person that would be the main blocker for that one. So we'll see if they're just playing a haggling game at the moment. But yeah, it's definitely going to grow. The other one, which is quite an interesting talk, is the potential merger of the Dutch and Belgian leagues. We've seen that one. It was proposed a couple of years ago. Ajax went against it because Ajax were in a little bit of a purple patch in Europe and selling a lot of players, so they didn't need it and they wanted to keep everything to themselves. That's me thinking selfishly there. But now, the reason I say that is because the last couple of years Ajax haven't been that successful, right? PSV have dominated the Netherlands landscape, and now Ajax are selling players, but nowhere near on the scale that they were in terms of the fees. And now suddenly Ajax have come back to the table and said, yeah, I'm considering that option. So they're back on the table. That could be a vote before Christmas that enables the Belgium and Dutch leagues to merge. That could be an interesting product.
And the talk goes back as far as 2021. They talked again in 2024 with the Jupiler League and the Eredivisie, 18-team Super League to challenge the top 5. What do you want to talk about next time? You want to talk about that to lead off?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of interesting developments in terms of merger of leagues, and competitions. I mean, look, the other thing is we've got goes back to the power of the Premier League, right? We've already seen the financial reports that have confirmed the Premier League is, if you add up the next 4 rival leagues together, they still don't quite add up to the revenues that the Premier League is generating. We've created a Super League. We've created a monster. Is that going to kill the European football landscape by having one league that's that dominant? So what does the rest of the world have to do? Do they have to play games overseas to try and bridge that? Do they have to create entertaining new products for the audience to grab into, which is going to be different? Or does the Super League become a serious topic of conversation again? So yeah, there's lots of other things that can, we could jump into on that one.
And we will certainly do that. As always, my friend, it's great to get the education when it comes to the economics of soccer and what we need to know as we are heading into, I think, an era that we all need to understand a lot better. It's always great to see you, my friend. Be safe. We will catch up with you next week, and the education will continue here in our master's class.
Thanks so much, John. Appreciate it.
It's there. It's kind of there, but it's not. It's like I had it activated, then I didn't. And then I screwed up, and then it wasn't activated. Anyway, Jason Stevens. Dell, you were asking who this is. What we have started doing on Tuesdays is we have started delving into the economics of soccer. And it started from a conversation that we were having to do with John Texter and Eagle Football Holdings and how he owes so many people so much money, yet 30 million of that is supposed to go to Atlanta United over the Thiago Almada transfer, and Atlanta United hasn't seen it. So we started to dive into John Texter and his finances and his ownership of things, and how people are mad at him on different continents, yet he is still able to function. Look, FIFA has a summary judgment against John Texter benefiting Atlanta United. But in having gone over all of John Texter's current legal wrangling right now, that it was one of these things where you end up with all of these questions that to all of us make too much sense. You know, FIFA has rendered a judgment against you, pay the man. And he's not. So he owes a lot of folks a lot of money, and he continues to borrow money in certain transactions at an astronomical interest rate, and continues to function as an owner of clubs across continents and leagues and things. And so with all of that conversation, that started us trying to figure out about what do we need to know about multi-club ownership, the individuals that run it, the individuals that are involved in it, the funds that are involved in it, the different companies that are attached to the idea of you have one parent company that is supposed to be owning a particular franchise that we're focusing on, but then all of a sudden to make ends meet when it comes to satisfying profit and sustainability results, you end up selling it to yourself and creating all these different companies, and there's no real traction in trying to figure out, okay, well, what if we just sell it? You know, like Chelsea does this a lot, selling it to blue co's and holdcos. And we gave you the full screen graphic about Chelsea in and of itself. Let me see if I can find it real quick. And if I can find the particular image that, and if I apologize if I go off camera because I want to see if I can find it. And it was a graphic that had everything involving, okay, so here it is. Here is Chelsea's layout for all of their different companies. That is what Chelsea and Strasbourg have right now to make ends meet. That is what Chelsea does. And you look at it and you go, okay, you have all of these different things navigating this one franchise. So we went from this idea of Chelsea and their 22 separate holding companies to going down that rabbit hole and saying, okay, well, if Chelsea does this, what about the rest of the Premier League? What do they do? How many do they have? And Jason came up with the number that was staggering. I mean, there are some of the franchises that have as few as 6 or 4. And then there are ones like Chelsea with Bowley Clear Lake that have 98 different ones. And so you see the percentages of Bowley Clear Lake and who owns what for how much. Bowley Clear Lake owns the 100%. Clear Lake half owns 61.5%. Bowley owns 38.5%. And then you get into the 2 separate holding companies, the 22 Holdco and the Blue Co. And then that splinters off into 5. And then one of them splinters off into 2. One of them splinters off into 2 more, and so on and so forth. Then the women's club is splintered off, and you're selling it to yourself and all these things. In this landscape, this was where, in a combination of John Texter and Eagle Football Holdings and finding out what Chelsea does, that was where this conversation started. And so what we have been doing with Jason Stevens, and I don't know, that is news to me, if he consulted with the 49ers. Remember, there was a point where I think it was the DiBartolo family had a piece of Swansea City. And that might be where the 49ers element, it's probably working for DiBartolo York as opposed to the 49ers themselves. So I think that's where that is, Del. But touching base with Jason on a weekly basis when we can track him down, we find out about the machinations of what's going on with all of these companies that own these franchises and navigate the landscape, and they do it all the different things. So did he work as a strength and conditioning coach? Wow, he worked as a strength and conditioning coach for them? Okay, I don't know if that's Jason or not. Well, I'll be more than looking there. It is. So, yeah, okay. So, football business. Okay, so athlete development. Okay. Well, it's cool. Okay. I did not know that. I'm just used to him and his new gig, basically as a consultant for franchises and stuff. What is UCFB? University of East London. Okay. So, and Jason has gone back to school. No, thank you, Dell. It's good to know. But in starting our conversations with Jason, did not meet him through Cook Islands. Literally, it was through all of the. Jason had ties to a website that had posted information about John Texter, and like I said, it started with the Texter rabbit hole, and figuring out why it was John Texter. Who did John Texter owe money to? Who does he owe money to? How many different versions of John Texter owes money to people? How much is it? And why is he still allowed to function as an owner when he owes multiple entities, multiple franchises, many millions of dollars or many millions of euros or many millions of pounds? Why is he still allowed to function when he's not paying what in courts he has been told to pay? So it started with the Thiago Almada transaction when FIFA came up with the summary judgment against John Texter on behalf of Atlanta United. Two separate transactions in totaling $30 million. That includes the sell-on fee that should have been for Atlanta United when Thiago was moved on recently. And so you have all of this, and so it's like, well, how is he allowed to function? Why is he allowed to function? So that question linked us to Jason, and Jason has been kind of our conduit in understanding the landscape when it comes to stuff like this and how they're allowed to function, and basically the shifting of paper that you see when it comes to companies like this. And so this is Bowley Clear Lake's layout for Chelsea right here. That's Bowley Clear Lake's layout for Chelsea. And so when you have a corporation in Bowley Clear Lake that does this, how many others do it? To what extent do they do it? And what do we need to learn from it so we're more informed when news items come across about owners wanting to buy franchises in multiple countries, whether it's Eagle or Michelle Kang or CFG or Bowley Clear Lake, all of these different companies, Redbird Capital, Cardinal that Jason mentioned this time around, all of these different companies, all these different hedge funds, all these different funds, all these different individuals that have all of these different ties to a bunch of different leagues in a bunch of different countries. Yeah, and that's the thing. But this is allowed to happen. This is allowed to happen currently in England with Chelsea. And you see that it's tied to the stadium. It's tied to merchandising. It's tied to the hotel. I mean, literally, look at the bottom. Look at the bottom for Chelsea here. The bottom of this with ties to the second level. So, I mean, literally, if you go from the bottom, and like I said, this is why we do this every week, so we can understand this better and know that you might have a company that says they're turning that they're in debt, but they might be turning a profit because you're shifting paper from one place to another. So understand that when we have numbers that are put out, and we had the discussion a couple of weeks ago about Manchester United. It's like, so how can Manchester United say that they have had a profit with their new financial numbers that were released, but still be operating under all of this debt? So this is the kind of stuff that we've been getting into. But literally, look at the bottom here. The bottom here involving Chelsea. You're looking at Chelsea FC. You're looking at Stamford Bridge Securities. You're looking at Chelsea Football Club. Literally, look at this. Chelsea Football Club is at the bottom in the middle. You would think that, okay, Bowley Clear Lake's at the top. You would think that Chelsea would be up there. No. It is tied through connections and multiple companies registered under Bowley Clear Lake. It is at the bottom of the pile. It is at the bottom of this pile. And you see how many different sections are attached to all of this. The car park, the hotel, the merchandising, the club, the securities, and Chelsea FC PTE. And then when you sold the women's club back to yourself through one of these other holding companies, Blueco 22 Midco. So basically, Chelsea sold the women's team to itself. You see the things, the blue in the middle at the bottom, Chelsea Football Club Limited. The transfer and sale of the women off to the side, and it is now being controlled by Blueco 22 Midco Limited, which is one of the many subsidiaries of Bowley Clear Lake's control over Chelsea and all the different aspects that are attached to it. So it's stuff like this. When you look at a headline, you sit there and say, oh, Chelsea's selling a hotel to itself, and it's selling a hotel to itself under a different company name. You have the properties, you have the projects, you have leisure services, you have the residential, you have property holdings, and you have the midco. That's the mid-level. All of these different subsidiaries and sections of Chelsea under Bowley Clear Lake are laid out here. And actually, there's a separate section that I'm covering under Blueco Alsace, but let me see if I can change it quickly here. There. Okay, so that's better. Okay, and you see Blueco Alsace down low right. That's the Strasbourg section. Literally the spin-off of Blueco 22 Midco in the mid-level on the right. Spins over to Chelsea Football Club, and then you have Blueco Alsace, which is where you're tied to Racing Club Strasbourg, RC Strasbourg. But that's Chelsea right there. Let me put me back in the low corner. But that's Chelsea. When other clubs and other ownership groups do stuff like this, we need to know about it. We need to know what the paths are and how they navigate all these things. All the shifting of the paper. That was why we started our conversations with Jason Stevens, and this is the kind of stuff that has been unearthed in the conversations with Jason Stevens. So having Jason on, who's been a consultant for football for a while, and he navigates these things and knows, okay, conversations are here and here and here, and here's what they're doing, and here's what they're doing, and here's what they're doing. That's why we do this. We might know Chelsea as, Chelsea owned by Bowley Clear Lake, but in matter of fact, you go down the flow chart and it's like secret subsection. It's not so well, holding club subsection, mid-level tied to the bottom level, and all these kinds of things. So literally, it started from that conversation about Thiago Almada and Atlanta United being owed money. Now it has turned into a segment that we try to have every Tuesday when it comes to having a deeper understanding about the financials when it comes to soccer these days. And it's been really cool to be able to unearth these kinds of things when it comes to Jason. So can't thank him enough for all of this when it comes to breaking all this stuff down. So next week, it's probably going to be a conversation involving the MCOs and the women's game. And so I think I did that wrong. Hang on just a second. So how about I do this? Let me do this, and then how do I? Hang on. All right. So this is probably what I should have done in the first place. So that, like I said, this has been one of the root causes of all of our figuring things out when it comes to ownership and what to know and where we should know and where we should look. It's just been part of our journalism and trying to figure out the lay of the land these days. And all of these companies that own all these things, that do all the stuff, and then that's where we are. So, like I said, that's the conversation. That's the conversation that we have, and then that's where we go. So that's all the stuff that happens here on the show. So once again, thanks to all of you folks for hanging out with us today. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to devolve this into flowcharts down here, but a couple of things before we go. And you're looking at, let's see, a couple of other things that have been attached to the morning. There was another, looks like the Uzbek Federation has made contact with Fabio Cannavaro as their new head coach. New stadium deal. We talked about stadium deals with Jason, and we talked about it last night on Soccer Over There. New stadium for AC Milan and Inter is closer after a San Siro sale has been approved. Approved the sale of the San Siro to the clubs early Tuesday after a 12-hour debate. Vote to sell the existing stadium and surrounding areas passed at 24-20 at about 3 a.m. The club plans to tear down the 99-year-old stadium and jointly build a new 71,500-seat arena. Milan and Inter released a joint statement. San Siro Stadium surrounding area valued at 197 million euro, according to Italy's tax agency. Sale has to be finalized before November 10, when the second tier, which was completed 70 years ago on that date, takes on historical significance and would almost be impossible to tear down. How come soccer down here is not a part of this flowchart? Because we're not owned by Bowley Clear Lake yet. That's why. Bart is looking for his deal. I don't think anyone has received their FIFA email yet. But so everything has to be finalized with the sale for the San Siro by November 10. Otherwise, you go up against a historic. What is it called when? Oh crap! When you have a historic building preservation, like the historic preservation kicks in at 70 years, and so by November 10, the second level, the second tier, 70 years old, that gets to preservation significance, and then you can't tear it down. So everything's got to be done by November 10. Clubs announced agreements. Morning, Hutch. Architectural firms Foster and Partners in Manica to design the new stadium after the council issued preliminary approval for the sale. New venue, part of an urban regeneration project covering more than 3 million square feet, slated to host the opening ceremonies of Milan Cortina in February. Ideas to have the new stadium ready when Italy co-hosts the 2032 Euros with Turkey. San Siro in its current state is not considered modern enough for UEFA to approve it for hosting tournament matches. And Five Star Group said the sale would be a $1.3 billion deal that would tear down the historic Piazza, replace it with offices, shopping malls, luxury hotels, and only lastly, a new stadium. So the San Siro is heading in that direction. So yeah, if you listen to the conversation that we had with Nick last night about this, about the San Siro and such. So that was part of the deal involving everything that was attached to the San Siro last night. So that's why we do what we do on Tuesdays. That's why we do what we do, because you got all this money floating around and people are sitting there saying, well, we make this much, we lose this much, we need this tax break, we need this, we need this, we need this, and all that. And so getting to dig into all of this, that's what we do on Tuesdays in the last half hour with Jason when we can catch up with him over in London. So next week with Jason, it's probably going to be the increase of women's ownership and MCOs, and the idea of the merger of the Belgian and Dutch leagues into an 18-team multi-country soccer division. So that'll be next week with Jason, and continue to talk about MCOs and how they impact everything. Delwood news ahead of Barca PSG. Lopez, Gavi, Joan Garcia unavailable. PSG, Dembele, Desiree Doué, and Marquinhos is out. We'll keep an eye on that and see if that impacts the numbers one way or the other. Okay, so tomorrow, it is a Wall Pass Wednesday. It is the return of Tyler Pilgrim, and we'll see about Dylan Butler, the busiest man in the Northeast. We are also going to get a visit from SCAD Soccer, and they are, on the women's side, they are ranked in the top 20 in the country in the NAIA, and we get to chase after them and find out what's going on right now, ranked number 9 in the country, and find out what they are going through at this early part of the year, knowing that everyone and anyone is gunning after them. We're going to catch up with Rebecca Gunn tomorrow at 10:30 and find out what's on her mind, as right now they are top 10 in the country, and we'll find out what's going on at SCAD. Also, we caught up with Alexander Pama, the men's head coach at Life University. We will be releasing a Red Clay soccer report later today with that interview, updating you on everything that happened on the weekend and posting all of that news and letting you know that that is the latest there involving the Red Clay and everything else that's going on here in the state of Georgia. Big win for Georgia Southern. That happened on the weekend as well, and we'll talk about all of that on tomorrow. Also looking to catch up with a couple of folks and find out what is going on in and around the world of soccer in a little less than 22 hours. So as we always say, back at it again here, 9:05 a.m. Eastern time, less than 22 hours away. We'll get through all of the news of the day. We'll talk Champions League. We might have an answer on Atlanta United 2 and when they will be playing and where they'll be playing. Match day 26, so they can get ready for match day 28. Still don't have that answer in MLS Next Pro. And by the way, Atlanta United has released the new video and visuals of the expansion of the training center, and it's gorgeous. So that is out and about. The new Miggy documentary is out and about, so keep an eye on all those things. And we'll talk about it all tomorrow with all of our guests and all the stuff as we get ready for the midweek here in the world of soccer. That's another go round of SDH AM. Thanks for dropping by, as you always do. Thanks for hanging out with us each and every single day. Since it is the end of the show, that means I get to do this. Mucha Plati, I'll play it safe. Let's see you less than 22 hours, almost on the verge of 21 and a half. Play it safe, everybody. Thanks to Jason Stevens. Thanks to KCD. And thanks to you. We'll see you tomorrow.